Vox slammed his fist on the podium, the loud bang silencing his Daxamite students' whispers. Quiet. What you're about to witness will haunt your nightmares. The bloodthirsty savages known as humans are the most violent beings in the universe. The grizzled veteran glared at the 30 adolescents before him, each one leaning forward, with a mix of anticipation and dread. Vox had seen horrors in his long military career, but nothing chilled him like humanity's brutality. He tapped the console, activating a holographic display of the recent UEF Daxamite war. The students gasped as a small squad of human marines ruthlessly tore through a force of Daxamite warriors 10 times their size. Vox zoomed in on the squad's leader, Captain Roy Boyd, a mountain of muscle and scar tissue. The juveniles trembled, watching Boyd crush a dozen soldiers with his bare hands, moving faster than their eyes could track. Vox shut off the horrific footage. Listen up, you snot-nosed brats. Humanity has only been in the stars for 5 decades, but they've already brought the galaxy to its knees. The UEF will stop at nothing to conquer us all. Never underestimate them. But teacher, didn't we beat them? A brave student asked. The war ended in our favor, right? Surely these humans can't threaten the mighty Daxam Empire? Vox slammed the podium again, harder. Idiot! We only won because the humans let us. If they wanted us extinct, they could wipe us out with a single ship. He took a deep breath, trying to control his rage. Pray to the gods that humanity never turns its full might against us. Dismiss. You may resume your classes in 1 hour. The instructor watched the students file out, their faces pale with terror. They were the future of Daxam, but Vox feared that future might be cut short by mankind's unquenchable thirst for blood and conquest. Vox's mind drifted back to the events that had sparked the bloody conflict between the Daxamites and humans. It had all started on the remote colony world of Epsilon 6. The Deus Invictus, a Daxamite warship bristling with advanced weaponry, emerged from hyperspace near the blue-green planet. On the bridge, Admiral Zor-El stood tall and proud, his chiseled features set in a scowl as he gazed upon the human settlement below. Open a channel to the colony, Zor-El barked. A communications officer rushed to comply, and soon the face of Governor Jack Harrison appeared on the view screen. Harrison was a former UEF Marine, his weathered face and piercing eyes speaking to a lifetime of combat experience. This is Admiral Zor-El of the Daxam Empire, the Daxamite commander declared. You will surrender your resources and submit to our rule immediately. Harrison's response was swift and blunt. No. Zor-El's face reddened with rage. How dare these primitive apes defy the might of Daxam? You have sealed your fate, human, he snarled. Helmsman, commence orbital bombardment. The Invictus unleashed a storm of plasma fire upon the colony, the ship's powerful cannons reducing buildings to molten slag and vaporizing entire city blocks. The bombardment continued for hours, until nothing remained of the settlement but a smoking crater. But as the dust settled, a shocking sight greeted the Daxamites. Hundreds of humans, led by Governor Harrison and his fellow ex-Marines, emerged from hidden underground bunkers, armed to the teeth and ready for war. Among them was Roy Boyd, his massive frame covered in scars from 100 battles. The humans launched a vicious guerrilla campaign against the Daxamite occupation force, striking hard and fast before melting away into the wilderness. They used improvised explosives, salvaged weapons, and their own cunning to inflict heavy casualties on the aliens, who were woefully unprepared for such unconventional warfare. Zor-El grew increasingly frustrated as his soldiers fell to the humans' hit-and-run tactics. In desperation, he ordered mass executions of captured colonists and even resorted to using chemical weapons against civilian targets. But these atrocities only hardened the humans' resolve and drew the attention of the UEF High Command. A UF battle fleet soon arrived in orbit, its mighty warships casting long shadows over the battered colony. The Daxamites, already weakened by the humans' relentless attacks, were quickly driven from Epsilon 6, fleeing back to their own space with their tails between their legs. The first blow in a long and terrible war had been struck, and the galaxy would never be the same. Vox paused, letting the horror of the Epsilon 6 massacre sink in. The students sat in stunned silence, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. But the old warrior wasn't finished. He had more to teach them about the ruthless efficiency of the human war machine. The UEF fleet arrived in orbit, led by Admiral Sarah Ivanova. A brilliant tactician, that one. Her ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the Daxamites didn't: stealth tech. The human vessels slipped past the enemy sensors and launched a surprise attack, catching the Daxamites with their pants down. Vox chuckled darkly. It was a massacre. Ivanova ran circles around our fleet, picking them off one by one. Her ships were like ghosts, appearing out of nowhere to unleash hell before vanishing again. By the time it was over, half the Daxamite fleet was space junk. The instructor's voice grew somber. But the real action was on the ground. While Ivanova played cat and mouse upstairs, Roy Boyd and his Marines were getting ready to take back the colony. They linked up with some UEF special forces and launched an all-out assault on the Daxamite command center. Vox's eyes glazed over as he remembered the carnage. It was like watching a pack of rabid wolves tear into a herd of sheep. Boyd and his men fought their way through the building, room by room, floor by floor. They used grenades, shotguns, even their bare hands to rip the Daxamites apart. The halls ran blue with alien blood. The old soldier leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. But the real prize was waiting at the top. Admiral Zor-El, the arrogant bastard who'd ordered the attack on the colony. Boyd found him cowering in his office, begging for mercy. But there was no mercy to be had, not from a human. Vox's fist clenched as he spoke. Boyd didn't waste time with words. He launched himself at Zor-El, a blur of fists and fury. The Admiral was stronger and faster, but Boyd was a force of nature. He pummeled the Daxamite into submission, breaking bones and rupturing organs until Zor-El was nothing but a whimpering sack of meat. The instructor straightened, his voice ringing out in the silent classroom. With their leader captured and their forces in disarray, the Daxamites surrendered. The occupation was over, and the UEF had won a decisive victory. But the real damage was done to our pride. We'd underestimated the humans, and we paid the price in blood. Vox's gaze swept over the ashen faces of his students. Let this be a lesson to you all. Never ever underestimate the humans. They may seem weak and primitive, but when pushed to the brink, they are capable of unimaginable violence and destruction. They will stop at nothing to protect what is theirs, and heaven help anyone who stands in their way. The old warrior turned back to the holographic display, his eyes distant. The Epsilon 6 incident was just the beginning. The UEF had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and now everyone was paying attention. The humans had drawn first blood, and they were hungry for more. The stage was set for a conflict that would shake the very foundations of the universe, a war that would pit the unstoppable force of human aggression against the immovable object of... Vox's voice hardened as he continued his grim lecture. The Daxamites were desperate for vengeance after their humiliation on Epsilon 6. Like the dishonorable scum they are, they resorted to cowardly sabotage and espionage to strike at humanity. The old soldier's eyes flashed with anger as he recounted the infiltration of the Titan research station. A team of Daxamite saboteurs, led by that snake Jax-Ur, slipped past the station's defenses and stole vital data on our weapons and tactics. When the security forces caught wind of the breach, all hell broke loose. Vox's fists clenched as he spoke, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. The Daxamites fought like cornered rats, gunning down anyone in their path. Scientists, security personnel, it didn't matter. They slaughtered them all. The instructor paused, his eyes growing distant. One of the victims was Dr. Michael Sorensen, a brilliant xenobiologist and a close friend of Roy Boyd. When Boyd heard the news, he went ballistic. He stormed into UEF command, demanding blood. Vox's voice grew colder as he described the UEF's response. High Command greenlit Operation Starkiller, a retaliatory strike against a Daxamite military installation on Krypton. Boyd handpicked his team, including Jack Harrison and some of the UEF's deadliest commandos. The holographic display flickered to life. showing grainy footage of the strike team infiltrating the Daxamite base using stolen stealth tech. They slipped in like ghosts, planting charges at key points throughout the facility. When the explosives went off, it was like the gates of hell had opened. The students watched in awe as the human commandos tore through the Daxamite defenders, their weapons spitting fire and death. At the center of the maelstrom was Roy Boyd, a force of nature in his armor, cutting down aliens with ruthless efficiency. The Daxamites threw everything they had at the humans, but it wasn't enough. Boyd and his team fought their way to the extraction point, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. By the time they were done, the installation was a smoking ruin, and hundreds of Daxamites lay dead. Vox leaned forward, his eyes boring into the students. Operation Starkiller sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be trifled with. We would meet any aggression with swift and brutal retaliation. The Daxamites had sown the wind, and now they were reaping the whirlwind. The instructor straightened, his voice growing ominous. But the Daxamites were not the only ones to take notice of humanity's strength. Other species, some far more powerful and advanced than the Daxamites, began to see the UEF as a potential threat. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf the entire galaxy. A war. Just when we thought the war couldn't get any worse, these Zorgon bastards showed up, Vox growled, his eyes narrowing. A race of cybernetic horrors, hell-bent on assimilating every living thing in the galaxy. They attacked human and Daxamite colonies alike, slaughtering civilians and turning the survivors into mindless drones. The students watched in horror as footage of the Zorgon attacks played out before them. Swarms of insectoid drones poured from the alien ships, their metallic limbs glinting in the harsh light of burning settlements. Screams of terror and agony filled the air as the Zorgons tore through the defenseless colonists, their bodies twisting and warping as nanites invaded their flesh. The UEF and the Daxamites had no choice but to put aside their differences and join forces against this new enemy, Vox continued, his voice grim. High Command tapped Roy Boyd to lead a joint strike force deep into Zorgon space. Their mission, infiltrate the mothership and take out the central control system. The display shifted again, showing Boyd and his team preparing for the assault. The colonel stood tall and proud in his power armor, his face a mask of grim determination. Beside him stood Kal-El, a skilled Daxamite fighter, his red cape billowing in the recycled air of the hangar bay. The strike force fought their way through the mothership, carving a path of destruction through the Zorgon hordes, Vox narrated, his eyes distant as if reliving the battle. Boyd and Kal-El fought side by side, their weapons flashing in the dim, organic light of the alien ship. They forged a bond of respect and camaraderie in the heat of combat, two warriors united against a common foe. The students leaned forward, their hearts pounding as Vox described the final assault on the mothership's core. They watched as Boyd and Kal-El battled their way through the last line of defenses, their armor scorched and battered, their faces streaked with sweat and blood. In the heart of the mothership, they confronted the Zorgon Queen, Vox whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the holographic projector. A monstrous creature, bloated and pulsing with malevolent energy. Boyd and Kal-El fought with everything they had, their weapons and fists blurring as they danced around the Queen's vicious attacks. The class held its breath as Vox recounted the final moments of the battle. Kal-El, his body broken and bleeding, detonated a powerful explosive device, sacrificing himself to destroy the Queen and the mothership's central core. Boyd, his armor shattered and his face a mask of grief, barely escaped the explosion, his ship rocketing away from the dying mothership as it collapsed in on itself. The Zorgon threat was ended that day, Vox said, his voice heavy with emotion. But the cost was high. Kal-El, a true hero, gave his life to save the galaxy, and Boyd, the man who had led the charge, was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered alliance and a war-torn universe. Vox's eyes shone with a fierce pride as he recounted the UEF Daxamite victory over the Zorgons. With their queen dead and their command structure in tatters, the Zorgon forces were no match for our combined might. We drove them back, system by system, liberating the colonies they had enslaved and destroying their hive ships with precision strikes. The students cheered, their faces alight with excitement and patriotic fervor. But Vox's expression darkened as he continued. Our triumph, however, was short-lived. As we celebrated our hard-won peace, a new threat emerged from within the ranks of our Daxamite allies. The holographic display flickered, revealing the stern, chiseled features of General Druzod, his eyes cold and calculating. Zod, a hardline traditionalist, believed that the Daxamites had grown soft and weak due to their alliance with humanity. In a swift and brutal coup, he seized control of the Daxamite government, declaring himself the new ruler of the empire. Vox's fists clenched as he described the horrors that followed. Under Zod's command, the Daxamite military launched a campaign of conquest and subjugation, targeting both human and alien colonies alike. They showed no mercy, enslaving entire populations and crushing any resistance with overwhelming force. The students gasped as footage of burning settlements and shattered starships played out before them, the screams of the dying echoing through the classroom. Vox's voice grew hard as he spoke of the UEF's response. In the face of this new threat, the UEF once again turned to its greatest hero, Colonel Roy Boyd. Tasked with leading a covert mission to infiltrate Daxam Prime and capture Zod, Boyd assembled a team of his most trusted comrades, including his old friend Jack Harrison and a group of Daxamite resistance fighters loyal to the memory of Kal-El. The display shifted to show Boyd and his team, clad in sleek black stealth armor, as they prepared for their mission. Codenamed Task Force Omega, the team launched a daring raid on the Daxamite capital, slipping past Zod's defenses and fighting their way into the heart of his stronghold. Boyd and Harrison moved like ghosts, their weapons flashing as they cut down Zod's elite guard with ruthless efficiency. Vox's eyes gleamed as he described the final confrontation between Boyd and Zod. In the depths of the stronghold, Boyd faced off against the tyrant himself. Zod, a product of Daxamite genetic engineering, possessed strength and speed far beyond that of a normal human. But Boyd was a force of nature, his raw skill and determination more than a match for Zod's inhuman abilities. The students watched, transfixed, as Boyd and Zod clashed in a vicious duel, their blows cracking stone and warping metal. Boyd fought with a savage grace, his fists and feet a blur as he pummeled the Daxamite warlord with relentless fury. Zod staggered under the onslaught, his eyes widening in disbelief as he realized that he was being beaten by a mere human. In a final, desperate move, Zod lunged at Boyd, his fists crackling with a secret Daxamite energy weapon. But Boyd was ready, sidestepping the attack and seizing Zod's arm in an iron grip. With a swift, brutal motion, Boyd snapped the warlord's limb like a twig, the sound of breaking bone echoing through the chamber. Zod sank to his knees, his face contorted in agony as Boyd loomed over him, a look of grim satisfaction on his scarred face. "It's over, Zod," Boyd growled, his voice low and menacing. "Your reign of terror ends now." Has Task Force Omega secured the stronghold and rounded up Zod's remaining followers? Word of the tyrant's defeat spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The Daxamite Empire, its leadership in shambles, quickly sued for peace, agreeing to dismantle its military and submit to UEF oversight. Vox's voice grew somber as he reflected on the aftermath of the conflict. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would take generations to heal. The UEF and the Daxamites, once bitter enemies, now had to find a way to coexist and rebuild what had been lost. It was a daunting task, but with heroes like Roy Boyd leading the way, there was hope for a brighter future. The old soldier paused, his gaze sweeping over the awestruck faces of his students. And that, my young charges, is the story of how humanity and its allies triumphed over the greatest threats the galaxy had ever known. But the universe is a vast and dangerous place, and there will always be new challenges to face, new enemies to conquer. It falls to you, the next generation, to take up the mantle of... Vox's eyes shone with pride as he recounted the hard-won peace between the UEF and the Daxamite Empire. In the aftermath of Zod's defeat, our two peoples came together to rebuild and forge a new alliance. We shared technology, resources, and knowledge, working side by side to heal the scars of war and create a better future for all. But the old soldier's expression darkened as he spoke of the new threat that emerged from within the UEF's own ranks. Not everyone was happy with this new era of cooperation. Some saw it as a betrayal of humanity's destiny, a surrender of our rightful place as masters of the galaxy. He tapped the console, bringing up an image of a grizzled, battle-hardened Marine with cold, calculating eyes. Colonel Jeremiah Holt, leader of the so-called Human Liberation Front, a fanatic who believed that any alliance with aliens was a sign of weakness, a corruption of our species' purity. The students murmured uneasily as Vox described the HLF's campaign of terror and sabotage. Bombs detonated in crowded marketplaces, supply convoys ambushed on lonely frontier worlds, Daxamite diplomats assassinated in their own embassies. The fragile peace, so hard won, began to unravel as tensions rose and accusations flew. The UEF knew it had to act fast, Vox growled. Roy Boyd was called back into service given a simple mission: find Holt and his inner circle and stop them before they could plunge the galaxy into another war. The display shifted to show Boyd and his team, a mix of UEF Special Forces and Daxamite warriors led by Devim, Kal-El's younger brother. They moved like ghosts through the shadows of seedy spaceports and lawless frontier worlds, following the trail of destruction left by the HLF. It was a brutal campaign, Vox said, his voice grim. Holt's followers were fanatics, willing to die for their twisted cause. They fought like cornered rats, lashing out with everything they had. The students watched in awe as footage of fierce firefights and desperate hand-to-hand combat played out before them. Boyd and Devim fought side by side, their moves perfectly synchronized as they cut through the HLF's ranks. But for every hideout they raided, every cell they destroyed, two more seemed to spring up in its place. Finally, after months of hunting, they caught a break, Vox said. A defector from the HLF revealed the location of Holt's main base, a remote asteroid outpost where he'd been stockpiling weapons and equipment for his planned uprising. The display zoomed in on a jagged, pockmarked rock drifting through the void, its surface bristling with gun emplacements and sensor arrays. Boyd and his team went in hard and fast, catching the HLF off guard, but Holt was ready for them. The students gasped as a hail of blaster fire erupted from the asteroid's surface, hammering Boyd's dropship as it swooped low over the base. The ship shuddered and lurched, smoke pouring from its engines, but Boyd refused to abort, guiding it down to a bone-jarring landing in the heart of the enemy stronghold. What followed was the fiercest battle of the entire campaign, Vox said, his voice barely above a whisper. Boyd and Devim fought their way through the base, room by room, corridor by corridor, blasting and brawling with Holt's elite guard. The air was thick with the stench of blood and burnt metal, the walls pockmarked with scorch marks and jagged shrapnel holes. The old soldier's fists clenched as he recounted the final confrontation between Boyd and Holt. The two warriors clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand duel, their armor cracked and sparking, their faces streaked with sweat and blood. Boyd's raw strength and skill pitted against Holt's cybernetic enhancements and fanatical rage. In the end, it was Boyd who emerged victorious, standing over Holt's broken body as Devim and the rest of the team secured the base and neutralized the remaining HLF forces. The insurrection was over, the fragile peace preserved, but the cost had been high. Vox's voice grew somber as he spoke of the aftermath. The UEF and the Daxamite Empire had weathered the storm, but the scars ran deep. Trust had been broken, old wounds reopened. It would take time and patience to rebuild what had been lost, to forge a true and lasting peace. The old soldier turned back to his students, his eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. But that is the task that falls to you, the next generation. To carry on the work that heroes like Roy Boyd and Kal-El started, to build bridges between our peoples and create a galaxy where all can live in harmony and prosperity. He slammed his fist on the podium, his voice ringing out like a clarion call. It won't be easy. There will always be those who seek to divide us, to stir up hatred and fear for their own gain. But you must be stronger than them, wiser than them. You must hold fast to the ideals of peace and cooperation, even in the face of adversity and strife. The students sat in rapt attention, their eyes wide with wonder and determination. They knew the road ahead would be long and hard, but they also knew that they had the strength and courage to walk it, to carry on the legacy of the heroes who had come before them. Vox's gaze swept over the classroom, his voice filled with a fierce pride and unwavering conviction. The future is in your hands now, my young warriors. Go forth and make it a bright one, a future worthy of the sacrifices that have been made, the blood that has been shed. Go forth and build a galaxy where humans and Daxamites and all the races of the universe can stand together as one. The old soldier straightened, his voice ringing out like a battle cry. Class dismissed! The students leapt to their feet, their fists raised in salute, their voices joined in a deafening chorus of "Sir, yes, sir." The sound echoed through the halls of the academy, a thunderous declaration of their resolve, their commitment to the cause of peace and unity. And as Vox watched them file out of the room, their faces alight with purpose and determination, he felt a swell of hope in his chest, a fierce, unshakable belief in the power of the human spirit, the indomitable will of a species that had clawed its way from the depths of savagery to the very pinnacle of the stars. This was just the beginning, he knew. There would be challenges ahead, enemies to face, battles to fight, but with warriors like these at the forefront, with the courage and tenacity of humanity to guide them, there was nothing they could not achieve, no foe they could not vanquish, no frontier they could not conquer. The galaxy trembled before them, the stars themselves seeming to bow in deference to the sheer unstoppable force of their resolve. And as Vox turned to gaze out at the vast, infinite expanse of space, he knew that the future was bright indeed, a shining beacon of hope and promise in the darkness of the void. In the wake of the Human Liberation Front's collapse, an uneasy peace settled over the galaxy. But as Roy Boyd and his allies soon discovered, new mysteries and dangers lurked in the depths of space. Strange energy readings drew the attention of both the UEF and the Daxamite Empire, emanating from an unexplored region known as the Omega Quadrant. Intrigued by the prospect of untapped resources and advanced technology, the two powers hastily assembled a joint expedition to investigate. Without warning, a swarm of sleek autonomous drones descended upon the expedition fleet, their weapons glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. Boyd barked orders as the ship's defenses roared to life, filling the void with flashes of plasma fire. "Evasive maneuvers," Boyd shouted over the comm, his hands flying across the tactical console. "Jor-El, what the hell are these things?" The Daxamite's face was grim as he analyzed the incoming data. They appear to be some sort of advanced defense system, programmed to protect something deeper within the quadrant. As the battle raged, the expedition's sensors detected the source of the mysterious energy signatures. A colossal structure loomed before them, its surface etched with intricate alien glyphs. A shimmering energy field surrounded the construct, repelling the drone's relentless assault. "That's no natural formation," Jor-El breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's a gateway, a portal to somewhere, or something." Boyd ground his teeth, his mind racing. They had to find a way inside to unravel the secrets hidden within. With a fierce determination, he rallied his forces, leading the charge as they fought their way through the drone swarms. Breaching pods punctured the energy field, allowing Boyd, Jor-El, and a hand-picked team to enter the structure. As they stepped inside, they found themselves in a world beyond their wildest dreams. Strange bioluminescent plants carpeted the ground, their tendrils pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. Towering spires of crystalline material rose into a sky filled with swirling, iridescent energy. It was a landscape straight out of a fever dream, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. But the expedition had little time to marvel at their surroundings. As they pushed deeper into the structure, they encountered a gauntlet of traps and challenges, each more daunting than the last. Gravity wells threatened to crush them, while phantasmal creatures stalked their every move. Boyd and Jor-El pressed on, their skills and resolve tested to the breaking point. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the heart of the structure. There, they discovered a truth that shook them to their very core. The gateway was a doorway to another realm, home to a race of beings composed of pure, radiant energy. The Celestials, as they called themselves, had watched over the galaxy for eons, guiding the evolution of countless species. But before Boyd and Jor-El could even attempt to communicate with these godlike entities, a new threat emerged. HLF loyalists, having tracked the expedition's progress, burst into the chamber, their weapons blazing. A desperate battle erupted, with Boyd and Jor-El fighting side by side against their fanatical foes. The Celestials, enraged by the intrusion, prepared to unleash their unfathomable power upon the galaxy. In a last-ditch effort to prevent catastrophe, Boyd and Jor-El reached out to the Celestials, pleading for understanding. Through a combination of skill, diplomacy, and sheer force of will, they managed to broker a fragile truce. The Celestials agreed to share a portion of their knowledge and technology with the UEF and the Daxamite Empire, in exchange for their protection and a vow of non-interference. As the expedition emerged from the gateway, forever changed by their encounter, they knew that a new chapter in galactic history had begun. As the UEF and Daxamite Empire raced to integrate the Celestials' advanced technology into their own systems, a new threat burst from the Omega Quadrant. The Kree, ancient rivals of the Celestials, launched a massive invasion of the galaxy, determined to crush humanity and the Daxamites before they could harness the Celestials' power. Led by the ruthless Emperor Ronan the Accuser, the Kree swept across the stars with their advanced warships and armies of genetically engineered soldiers. Planet after planet fell to the Kree onslaught as they bombarded worlds from orbit and landed legions of troops to slaughter any resistance. Roy Boyd and his allies found themselves on the front lines, fighting desperate battles to slow the Kree advance. Boyd led strike teams to sabotage Kree supply lines and destroy their landing craft, buying precious time for the UEF and Daxamites to mobilize their forces. In one daring raid on a Kree supply base, Boyd and his team, including Jack Harrison and Devon, fought their way into the heavily guarded facility. As they planted explosives, they stumbled upon a shocking discovery. The Kree had captured a group of Celestials and were using their energy to power their war machine. Boyd's face hardened with anger as he saw the Celestials trapped in glowing containment fields, their essence being drained away. He knew they had to free them. "Change of plans," Boyd barked. "We're shutting this place down and getting those Celestials out of here." Harrison and Devon nodded grimly, readying their weapons as alarms began to blare. Kree soldiers poured into the chamber, firing energy bolts at the raiders. Boyd and his team took cover, returning fire with plasma rifles and grenades. They fought viciously, blasting Kree warriors apart and pushing forward to the containment controls. As Harrison hacked the system, Boyd and Devon held off wave after wave of Kree reinforcements. The air grew thick with the stench of ozone and burnt flesh. With a triumphant shout, Harrison deactivated the containment fields. The Celestials surged free, their forms blazing with blinding light. They turned on the Kree, unleashing devastating energy blasts that vaporized the remaining soldiers. Boyd and his team escaped the crumbling facility as the Celestials laid waste to the Kree base. But he knew this was only the beginning. Determined to deal a crippling blow to the Kree war effort, Boyd devised a plan to infiltrate the Kree homeworld and destroy the power generators fueled by the captive Celestials. It was a desperate gambit, but it could turn the tide of the war. As they geared up for the mission, Boyd was approached by Mar-Vell, a Kree defector who sought to overthrow Ronan's tyrannical rule. Though initially distrustful, Boyd saw the value in Mar-Vell's knowledge of Kree tactics and technology. Together, they led a strike force to the Kree homeworld, fighting their way through the planet's heavily defended capital. Mar-Vell guided them to the central power grid, where they faced fanatical resistance from Ronan's elite guard. Boyd and his allies battled through the Kree lines, unleashing a hail of plasma bolts and seismic charges. The ground shook with explosions as they closed in on the generators. In the heart of the power plant, they found more captured Celestials. writhing in agony as their life force was drained away. Mar-Vell shut down the containment fields, while Boyd and the others held off the last of the Kree defenders. The Celestials rose up, their rage shaking the foundations of the city. They lashed out with searing energy beams, reducing the power plant to molten slag. The Kree energy grid went dark, the pulsing lights of their war machines flickering and fading across the planet. But as Boyd and his team made their escape, a looming figure descended from the sky. Ronan the Accuser had arrived, wielding the universal weapon, a staff that crackled with the fundamental forces of the cosmos. "Foolish primitives," Ronan sneered. "You only delay the inevitable. The Kree will grind your worlds to dust." Boyd and Mar-Vell charged at Ronan, weapons blazing. The Kree Emperor laughed as the universal weapon absorbed their shots, the energy only making the staff glow brighter. Ronan lashed out with the staff, sending Boyd and Mar-Vell flying. They crashed into the rubble, their armor cracking from the force of the impact. Staggering to their feet, they looked to each other and nodded. They knew what had to be done. As Mar-Vell drew Ronan's fire, Boyd leapt at the Emperor, grappling for control of the universal weapon. They struggled back and forth, the staff's energy crackling and warping the air around them. With a final desperate heave, Boyd wrenched the universal weapon from Ronan's grasp. He turned the staff on the Kree Emperor, unleashing a blast of cosmic force that sent Ronan hurtling into the sky, vanishing into the smoke-filled heavens. Boyd turned the universal weapon on the remaining Kree forces, the staff's power tearing through their ranks and sending them fleeing back to their ships. The Kree invasion had been broken, their forces scattered and leaderless. As the UEF and Daxamite fleets arrived to drive the Kree back into the Omega Quadrant, Boyd and his allies celebrated their hard-won victory, but they knew that this was only the beginning of a new era, one in which the fate of the galaxy would be decided by those who wielded the power of the Celestials. The aftermath of the Kree invasion left the galaxy in shambles. Planets lay in ruin, their surfaces scorched and cratered by the relentless bombardment of Kree warships. Billions had perished in the onslaught, their screams echoing across the void long after their worlds had been reduced to ashes. "We have to keep going," Boyd said, his voice raw and hoarse. "We have to rebuild, it's what they would have wanted." He thought of Jack Harrison and Devon, of all the friends and comrades he had lost in the war. Their sacrifices could not be in vain. And so Boyd threw himself into the reconstruction efforts, working tirelessly alongside the UEF and its allies to bring aid and supplies to the devastated worlds. He helped clear rubble and erect shelters, his enhanced strength and endurance allowing him to work for days without rest. But even as the galaxy began to heal, Boyd could feel a growing sense of unease. Something was wrong, a creeping dread that set his teeth on edge and sent shivers down his spine. It was Mar-Vell who first brought word of the rifts. The Kree defector had been monitoring the fabric of space-time, his instruments detecting strange anomalies and disturbances. "The universal weapon," he said, his voice grave. "Its use has torn holes in reality itself." Boyd listened in growing horror as Mar-Vell described the cosmic horrors that were beginning to emerge from the rifts. Eldritch abominations, their forms twisted and grotesque, were attacking colonies and ships without warning or mercy. Entire worlds were being consumed by the otherworldly terrors, their populations slaughtered or driven mad. "We have to stop this," Boyd said, his fists clenching. "We have to find a way to seal the rifts before it's too late." And so a desperate plan was hatched. Mar-Vell and Jor-El, working alongside the greatest scientific minds of the UEF and the Daxamite Empire, designed a massive bomb, a device that would collapse the rifts and seal the tiers in space-time forever. But to do so, it would have to be detonated at the heart of the largest rift, located in the ruins of the Kree homeworld. Boyd and a hand-picked team of warriors and scientists set out on the perilous mission, their ship cutting through the twisted wreckage of the Kree capital. The once mighty city lay in ruins, its towering spires and gleaming domes reduced to rubble and ash. As they descended into the heart of the rift, Boyd and his team were set upon by hordes of eldritch abominations. their twisted forms writhing and screaming in the darkness. Plasma fire lit up the gloom as the team fought their way forward, their weapons tearing through the otherworldly flesh of the horrors. But even as they battled the cosmic monstrosities, Boyd and his team were confronted by another threat. Remnants of the Kree military, still loyal to their fallen emperor, emerged from the shadows, their weapons blazing as they sought to stop the intruders. Boyd and Marvell fought side by side, their movements a blur of deadly grace as they cut down the Kree soldiers. Jor-El and the other scientists worked frantically to arm the bomb, their fingers flying over the controls as they raced against time. But as they neared the heart of the rift, Boyd and his team made a horrifying realization. The bomb's detonation would not only seal the rift, but also destroy what was left of the Kree homeworld, killing the millions of survivors who had taken refuge there in the aftermath of the war. Boyd felt a wave of despair wash over him. He couldn't let all those innocent people die, but he also knew that if the rift wasn't sealed, the entire galaxy would be consumed by the cosmic horrors. As his team's ships blasted away from the planet's surface, Boyd stood before the pulsing, writhing mass of the rift, the bomb clutched in his hands. He thought of all the lives he had taken, all the friends he had lost, all the sacrifices that had been made to bring them to this moment. With a final defiant roar, Boyd activated the bomb and hurled himself into the heart of the rift. The world around him exploded in a blaze of white light, the fabric of reality itself tearing and reforming as the bomb's energy collided with the eldritch forces of the rift. From orbit, the surviving members of Boyd's team watched as the Kree homeworld was consumed by the blast, the planet's surface buckling and shattering as the rift collapsed in on itself. They felt a profound sense of loss, knowing that Roy Boyd, the man who had led them through so much, was gone forever. But they also knew that his sacrifice had not been in vain. The rift was sealed, the cosmic horrors banished back to the abyss from whence they had come. The galaxy was safe, at least for now. As the people of the galaxy began to rebuild once more, the story of Roy Boyd's heroism spread far and wide. Statues were erected in his honor, his name whispered with reverence and awe by all who heard it. He had given his life so that others might live, a true hero in every sense of the word. But even as the galaxy mourned its fallen champion, a new threat was stirring in the darkness beyond the stars. An ancient evil, long thought vanquished, was beginning to awaken, its malevolent gaze fixed upon the fragile peace that Roy Boyd had bought with his blood. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.